What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Another player breakdown between Odell Beckham Jr. and Julio Jones. I'm very excited about this one because I'm always trying to do these player comparisons on players that I genuinely go in not knowing the difference. Having guys I rank right next to each other, that are going right next to each other in drafts, that when I'm in a draft, I'm like, listen, they're both really good. I don't really know for sure which one to take. So going into this, I have Julio as my wide receiver 4 and Odell as my wide receiver 5. They were right next to each other. So let's just see if that changes. But before we do, stat of the day. Always got to start off with the stat of the day. Yesterday's answer was Kyle Rudolph, who had the best drop grade last season. Remember, drop grade was a good thing to have it being high. So Kyle Rudolph had really good hands last year. And the winner was Chase Broderick. Today's stat. What team had the top-rated special teams in 2018? So not a player today. What team had the top-rated special teams last season? Okay, let's start this breakdown with Julio Jones coming off the board as the 4th wide receiver, 11th overall on that turn at the end of the first round, beginning of the second round. And he's been over 1,400 receiving yards in 5 consecutive seasons. That's honestly incredible. That is unreal for a player to be that dominant 5 consecutive years. In fact, he's just one of 4 players all time with over 10,000 receiving yards before their age 30 seasons. The other 3 are Randy Moss, Larry Fitzgerald, Megatron, and Julio actually has the most receiving yards of all of them. His problem has not been the receptions, it's not been the yards. You know those are going to be there. Where he struggles is the touchdowns. Remember those 3 names that are listed: Randy Moss, Larry Fitzgerald, and Megatron. Well, over that same stretch of time, they had 101, 77, and 74 touchdown receptions. Julio has 51. So this is a big drop-off. After averaging 9 touchdowns per season over his first 2 years, he's averaging 6.2 in the remaining 5 healthy seasons. So not even including that season where he was injured. Over his last 5 healthy seasons, he's averaging 6.2 touchdowns per season. Last year, Julio was tied with T.Y. Hilton, Brandon Cooks, Ezekiel Elliott, and Zay Jones, of all people, for 19th in targets inside the 20-yard line. And he was tied with a bunch of people for 30th in targets inside the 10. And honestly, you can't blame the Falcons for not using him. I mean, you look at his conversion rates. He's converted 5 of those 17 targets inside the 20 last season to touchdowns. Just 5 of 17, and just 2 of the targets inside the 10 were converted to touchdowns with an unbelievably low catch percentage as well. So not only does he have a low conversion percentage, he's a low catch percentage in general on those targets, and his 16.7 target percentage inside the 10-yard line was 54th last season. 53 other players in the National Football League had a higher share of their team's targets inside the 10-yard line than Julio Jones. That can obviously go up, but don't we say that every single year that can go up? You know, what if that goes up? And it just hasn't been. Some players just don't get used in the red zone, maybe because they're not good enough. I don't know. I don't know the rationale exactly for why the Falcons haven't been using him in the red zone, but they haven't been. And he hasn't honestly been that great on the targets he is getting. The Falcons hired Dirk Cutter back again this season as their offensive coordinator. He was the team's offensive coordinator from 2012 until 2014. And these are how they ranked. So in pass attempts, they ranked 8th, 3rd, and 3rd over that stretch. And in passing yards per game, they ranked 5th, 5th, and 5th. So while Dirk Cutter has absolutely no idea how to call run plays, that's a problem for Freeman. It's not a problem for Julio. We know that this offense is going to throw the ball a ton. We know that they're going to be above average in points per game. And we know that he's going to be around 1,400 yards. It's honestly going to come down to touchdowns for Julio. And the one other thing that people bring up, it's the touchdowns and it's the injuries with Julio Jones. Julio has played at least 13 games in all but 1 season in his career. So yes, he's suffered a million foot injuries and ankle injuries, and he seems to limp to the sidelines every other game, if not every game. But he's played in 77 of his past 80 possible regular season games. So while he is at a slightly elevated injury risk, if you look at him versus your average NFL wide receiver, he has an elevated injury risk. These injuries haven't been like a torn ACL. They haven't been knee problems. The foots are concerning. Like, you don't want players who have a bunch of foot injuries, but he has been still producing. Remember, 1,400 yards in 5 consecutive seasons, played in 77 of his last 80 possible games. Has he been a decoy for some of those games? Yes. But also, we've known for some of those games he was going to be. So you have had warning, hey, the dude's not 100%. He's probably going to be a decoy out there. Point is, he's been out there. He does suffer some injuries. He's at elevated risk, but he hasn't suffered major injuries. He's been small, minor injuries. And you look at it, well, what am I getting? You know, what am I getting for the slightly elevated risk? You're getting a guy who's got 136 receptions, 1,871 yards, 8 touchdown upside. Like, that's in his range of outcomes because he's done it. And just last season, he had 113 receptions for nearly 1,700 yards and 8 touchdowns. So my current projection on Julio is 100 receptions for 1,500 yards and 7 touchdowns. And you guys hear me bring up my projections and my rankings in a lot of these videos, but they're constantly changing as news comes out. So if you want the latest rankings, the latest projections, head on over to our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com, and check out our draft package. That's where you can download my projections on every single player. Because you might hear today, I say one projection, and in 2 weeks you hear another one, and you're like, whoa, that's a different one than I saw last time. Yeah, because news comes out, because injuries happen, a lot of things change. And I mean, as soon as news comes out, I can just go in, flip around the rankings, change the projections, and everything's good to go. So make sure you guys check that out. But that's it for Julio. That's basically Julio in a nutshell. He's going to be around that 1,400, 1,500 with upside for more receiving yards. He's going to be around 100 receptions. Where's he going to be for the touchdowns? That's really up to you to decide, honestly. I have him at 7. And that seems like a good number, but he could get a ton, he could get 3. We don't really know for sure. But let's talk about Odell. And I want you guys to fully understand how much of an upgrade Baker Mayfield is from Eli Manning. I'm sure you know that Baker Mayfield's better. I'm not questioning your intelligence here. But I don't think everyone realizes how big of an upgrade it is. Over the last 6 seasons, Eli has ranked as follows in deep ball accuracy. 34th, 32nd, 19th, that was his good year, 19th, which is below average, 31st, 42nd, and 25th. Well, Baker ranked 3rd in his rookie season. Over the last 6 years, Eli has ranked as follows in PFF pass grade: 21st, 19th, 26th, 32nd, 25th, and 31st. Baker was 10th last season as a rookie, getting no first-team snaps in the offseason, and was actually the 4th best quarterback over the last 8 weeks of the season. He's going from an extremely below-average quarterback to an already elite quarterback. Odell also has the 9th most receiving yards before his age 27 season of all time. But he's missed time due to injury. So if you look at that same list and you say how good were those guys in yards per game, just 2 players since 1970 have over 5,000 receiving yards before their age 27 season while having 92 or more receiving yards per game. And guess who they are? We're breaking them down today. It's Julio Jones and Odell Beckham Jr. But the thing is, Julio's done that with Matt Ryan. You know, Odell's had to carry Eli Manning to mediocrity. I mean, he's carried him from being pathetic to being a little bit better than pathetic. And that's all thanks to Odell. That is no thanks to Eli Manning. Give Odell an elite quarterback on an elite offense that can score a bunch of points. And I mean, you're talking about a potential monster season. There are 2 concerns. So there were 2 concerns with Julio. There are also 2 concerns with Odell. One of them is the injuries, and the other one is opportunity. So I want to address both of these. The first one is injuries. He had a hamstring injury when he first entered the league, and it forced him to miss his first few games as a rookie, but then he came back, was fully recovered from the hamstring injury, posted 91 receptions for 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns through 12 weeks. Not a bad performance there. And then he played 2 consecutive healthy seasons before suffering an ankle injury in the 2017 preseason, and then ultimately fracturing his fibula to end that season. The next injury was his quad bruise he suffered in week 12 last season. He played through the injury in week 13 and then was held out of the final 4 weeks. We're not in the training staff, so we don't know. But let's be honest, they were tanking towards the end of the year. So would it be shocking if we found out? We won't find out. But if we were to find out that he was just held out of the last few weeks because they wanted to lose just to get a better draft pick, wouldn't shock me at all because that team was a dumpster fire. And listen, he probably didn't want to play either. So if they were in like a playoff hunt and he was on the Browns this season, suffers the same injury, I bet you he's playing towards the end of that season. But here's the thing about those injuries. They are not a concern moving forward. They are not injuries that elevate his risk for this season. He hasn't suffered a single knee injury, and the ankle and quad injuries, they could have happened to anyone. Players that we worry about are guys that suffer these hamstring injuries all the time, or they've suffered a torn ACL or a torn Achilles, or they have a long injury of one of their ankles or one of their feet, just getting hurt over and over and over again. That's not the case with Odell. He has the exact same chance of suffering injury as other receivers who are getting elite volume. It's the only reason he might be elevated from a normal receiver is because he's getting elevated volume, so he just gets hit more. But him himself, on a per target basis, is not at an elevated injury risk. And people love, they just love to come up with meaningless stats, just stats that they just pull out of nowhere and then they try and throw on and force some narrative. And one that I've seen is total games missed. And that is such a garbage stat because it takes everything out of context. Which is worse, a torn ACL or a torn ACL? Neither, right? Because they're the exact same thing. So why are we using total games missed when one guy tears his ACL in week 2 and one guy tears his ACL in week 16? You can't use total games missed because that takes out of context when they suffered the injury. But people will look at Odell's 20 games missed and be like, oh, wow, he's extremely injury prone. That doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you that nearly all of those games came from one freak injury and being held out likely during a tanking season. Guys like Sammy Watkins, Emmanuel Sanders, Will Fuller, they are so much riskier this season as it pertains to injury, and yet all of them have missed less games due to injury. Never listen to someone who points to total games missed due to injuries and says, look at all of these games. You only should be listening at what these injuries are. Obviously, you can point to someone and be like, hey, he hasn't missed a game in 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. Well, yeah, listen to that because that proves that the dude just doesn't get hurt. So that's a fine thing. If anyone ever says he's only missed 2 games in the past 2 years, yeah, that's fine. You can listen to that. But you should still follow up and be like, hey, why did he miss those 2 games? Did he tear his ACL late in the season? Is it something I should be concerned about? So just know that Odell is not at an elevated injury risk from other players that are getting elite volume. He could still suffer an injury, but so could anyone. It's not going to be related to the past. And the other thing people bring up is volume. He's averaged 10.5 targets per game over his career, which would be 168 targets over a full 16 weeks. That's not impossible for him this season at all. I mean, he could get 170, 180 targets for all we know, but it's more likely he finishes around 150. That's kind of where I think he's going to be at, is around 150 targets. They have Chubb, they have Duke for now, but in all likelihood, I don't think he finishes the season on that team. They have Jarvis Landry and David Njoku. And that's an elite cast, and so people are worried that there's not enough volume to go around. But realistically, you could say the same thing about Julio. I mean, Freeman catches passes. I expect Calvin really to be in on more plays. I mean, he didn't actually really play a full snap share last season. I expect him to get more targets. And then Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper's a decent tight end who's going to have a target share. So yeah, he's not going to get 250 targets, but he's still going to be amongst the league leaders in targets. My current projection is on the low side. My current projection is on the low side for Odell, and this is how I have it split at the moment. Odell with 140, Landry with 116, Njoku with 98, Duke Johnson 55, Nick Chubb 49, and then everyone else gets sprinklings. I mean, some guys are in the 40s and 30s and stuff, and there's a bunch of people on the team that you just give a few targets to. But that's where most of the targets are going in this offense. And if I were to change that, honestly, if anything, I bump up Odell a few, take a few away from Njoku, and then maybe, I guess if Duke leaves, I'm going to have to redistribute those targets. But the point is, I expect him to be around 150. And even at 140 targets, his projection comes out to 94 receptions for 1,445 yards and 12 touchdowns, which, because of the touchdowns, comes out to more points and half-point scoring than Julio Jones. And actually, now that I think of it, under any format, I didn't even have to say, all these comparisons are for half-point PPR, but under any format, that stat line beats out Julio. So what's my decision? Remember, it doesn't actually all come down to projection. My rankings are based off of the projections, but it's not an end-all be-all with the projections. I have people ranked higher when they have a lower projection. The thing is, I think they're both awesome picks. I think that the value you're getting, because you can actually, at that 12-13 turn, you can get both of these guys in your team, and the upside there is incredible because there are still running backs you can get in your next 3rd and 4th round picks and even 5th round picks that have a lot of upside as well. So you've got a ton of upside. You can pair both of them together or one of them with Michael Thomas. However, at the end of the day, I need to make a decision here, and I will be adjusting my rankings and putting Odell ahead of Julio. This is a decision we've actually had to make over the past few years, but over the past few years, Odell's been in New York, and that's with a terrible quarterback on a team that can't score. And I honestly just started sitting down. I looked at the projections, and they were better. I looked at all the points, and the points were in his favor. And then I thought about, how could we possibly say it's a downgrade? I mean, realistically, he's going from just a putrid offense. Yeah, he was going to get a few more targets, but these targets are not good targets. They're not high expected points targets. They're not even high conversion targets. These targets are going to be so much better in Cleveland, and there's going to be so many more touchdown opportunities. Is he going to score more touchdowns? I mean, they're random, so we don't know for sure, but there's going to be so many more opportunities, and I just can't say that he's worse off. And since we were already having this discussion, I've got to put Odell ahead of Julio Jones. So that's the end of this breakdown. Make sure to let me know your thoughts on this discussion in the comment section below. And also, are there other people you want me to break down? Is there a decision that you're coming to? Typically, I'd like these to be in the top 4 rounds, because once you get further than that, there's so many more factors. You're talking about upside and risk and how many people you already have on your team at certain positions and everything. And there's a lot more factors that go into it in the later rounds. But if you guys have decisions that you've constantly been needing to make and you just don't know the answer in the first 4 rounds, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll try and do a breakdown for those 2 players. But that's the end of this video. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, how about we hit the like button? How about we subscribe if we are new? And thanks for watching.